I didn't do it. Please believe me. Clara's desperation echoed through the cold courtroom walls, but no one seemed to listen. The evidence, cold and relentless, pointed to her. The promising architect, now an outcast, accused of a brutal murder she swore she hadn't committed. Her future, her freedom, her very life hung by a thread as the prosecution distilled every drop of hatred, painting her as a calculating killer. But in the deadly silence that followed the imminent conviction, a flutter of wings erupted in the chamber, and a raven, with shrewd eyes and plumage dark as night, landed on the windowsill. In its beak, an object gleamed with a long-held secret, and what it revealed would forever change Clara's fate and the face of justice. The raven, a creature of mystery, did not remain on the windowsill. With a beat of wings that made the air vibrate, it boldly crossed the chamber, silencing everyone. The murmurs ceased, and all eyes, previously fixed on Clara and the impending sentence, now followed the bird. The prosecutor, Dr. Almeida, severe-faced, frowned, about to protest, but the words died in his throat when the raven landed. It wasn't just anywhere, but on the judge's bench, mere inches from his hand resting on the court documents. A collective gasp escaped. Clara, her heart racing, felt a pang of recognition. It was him, the raven she secretly fed at her office window. Her eyes, previously clouded with despair, now shone with hope. The judge, Dr. Ricardo Mendez, with graying hair and an impeccable demeanor, raised an eyebrow, surprised, but remained calm. He watched the raven, which, with a deliberate movement, deposited a small, dark object on the polished wood of the bench. It was a memory card, tiny, almost imperceptible, but it seemed to radiate importance. "What insolence is this?" Dr. Almeida snarled, his voice laden with indignation. "Your Honor, I request this animal be removed. This is a disrespect to the court." His face was red, shaken, but Judge Mendez did not take his eyes off the object. He reached out, picking up the card delicately. He examined it, his brow furrowed, and then his eyes turned to Clara, who watched him with feverish intensity. She felt a shiver. That piece of plastic, she knew, was the key. It had disappeared. The police hadn't found it, and she had desperately tried to mention it. "This object," the judge began, his voice grave and thoughtful, "appears to be a memory card. Does anyone in the prosecution or defense recognize this item or its possible relevance to the case?" The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Almeida, uncomfortable, exchanged nervous glances with his team. Clara's defense attorney, Dr. Lucia, experienced and marked by tension, stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the card with disbelief and hope. "Your Honor, my client mentioned the existence of a memory card from a hidden camera in her office, which disappeared from the crime scene. She insisted it would contain irrefutable proof of her innocence." A louder murmur began to spread. Clara felt her legs weaken, not from fear, but from an overwhelming emotion. The raven, mission accomplished, flapped its wings again, flying back to the windowsill. From there, it observed the scene with its piercing eyes. That animal, an unlikely witness, had brought to light a crucial piece of the puzzle. Justice, which had seemed so blind and relentless, perhaps now had a real chance to see the truth. Hope, once a distant whisper, echoed louder and more vibrantly in Clara's heart, promising a turning point. Judge Ricardo Mendez, with the memory card in hand, felt the weight of the moment. His eyes swept the room, observing the anticipation and shock. "Given the defense's claim and the unusual presentation," he declared, his voice firm, "I will order its content to be verified. The court will take a brief recess for a forensic technician to analyze it in a secure room and present a report." A commotion swept through the courtroom. The decision was a ray of light in Clara's darkness, a glimmer of hope she barely dared to entertain. Dr. Almeida, red-faced, rose abruptly. "Your Honor, we cannot accept evidence brought by an animal. Chain of custody violated." This is a farce, a desperate attempt to divert attention. His voice resonated with fury. Dr. Lucia, however, remained calm, her eyes fixed on the judge. Your Honor, truth does not choose its messengers. My client pleaded for the existence of this card, and the police failed to find it. Its origin does not negate its relevance. I request that the analysis be conducted urgently and impartially. Clara felt her heart racing, a mix of relief and dread. With each word from the prosecutor, a chill ran down her spine, fearing that the newly awakened hope would be snatched away. But Lucia's determined gaze and the judge's seriousness calmed her. She raised her eyes to the window where the raven still sat, motionless, a silent guardian. Its black eyes seemed fixed on her, a silent connection only the two understood, a bond of gratitude. It was as if it knew the weight it carried, the secret it had brought to save her. Judge Mendez gently tapped his gavel with authority, restoring order. Dr. Almeida, your concern is noted and will be taken into account. However, justice demands that all possibilities be explored, especially when an individual's freedom is at stake. The validity of the evidence will be assessed after its content is analyzed and a report is presented. For now, the court is adjourned for 60 minutes. The sound of the gavel echoed, sealing the recess. People in the gallery whispered, their gazes fixed on Clara, now with new curiosity and doubt about her guilt, previously so certain. Doctor. Lucia approached Clara, placing a hand on her shoulder. Hold on, Clara. This is our moment. The raven. A miracle. Her eyes welled up, and Clara felt a lump in her throat. I knew it existed, Lucia. I knew it was there, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion and frustration. The lawyer squeezed her shoulder, conveying strength. That small memory card, coming from such an unexpected source, represented Clara's last and improbable chance to prove her innocence, to unmask the farce that enveloped her. The courtroom, once a stage of condemnation, now seemed a battlefield where truth fought to emerge, with the help of a winged ally. The minutes of the recess dragged like hours for Clara. Led to an adjoining room, the tension was palpable. Each tick-tock of the clock amplified her anxiety, reliving months of anguish. She thought of the life stolen from her, of the cruel accusation. Injustice seemed a monster, but now a small light shone. She recalled each time the raven came to her window. A solitary visitor she fed with crumbs, never imagining it would be her savior. That simple act of kindness had a profound meaning, an invisible link that would transcend logic, bringing the promise that truth would always find a way. Clara, sitting in the adjoining room, felt the weight of each second slipping like sand through her fingers. The image of the raven, landing on the judge's bench, was a beacon amidst the storm of her memory, a faint but persistent light that defied the darkness. She recalled the cold mornings in her office, when the small, dark-feathered bird, which she affectionately called Shadow, would come to peck at the window. No one knew of that silent friendship, a small secret of her routine, a refuge from the loneliness that surrounded her. She always set aside a piece of her bread or biscuit, offering it with a sad smile, seeking a moment of peace amidst the overwhelming pressure of her work and the pain of losing her partner. Who would have thought that such an unpretentious gesture of kindness, born of compassion and loneliness, would be her last and most improbable hope? Altruism, she thought, sometimes manifests in the most unexpected ways, weaving invisible threads that save us when we least expect it, connecting lives in ways that reason cannot explain. Dr. Lucia, who accompanied her, watched Clara with a mixture of concern and deep admiration. The lawyer, with years of experience in courts and countless complex cases, had never witnessed anything so extraordinary, so laden with symbolism. The raven, the memory card. It was as if Providence itself had intervened dramatically. "Clara," Lucia said, her voice soft but firm, You possess an inner strength I've rarely seen, to maintain unwavering faith in your innocence, even when everything seemed irremediably lost and the world turned against you. That is truly remarkable and inspiring." Clara merely nodded, her eyes fixed on a distant spot on the wall, reliving the sleepless nights. The cruel accusations that tore at her soul, the feeling of being abandoned by everyone except that small, winged creature. That raven was more than a bird. It was a link to a truth that refused to be buried, a silent guardian of her honor. Meanwhile, in the judge's chambers, Dr. Ricardo Mendez examined the tiny memory card alongside a forensic technician, a young man with glasses and a concentrated expression. The judge's seriousness was evident in every line of his face. He had seen many cases, many unexpected twists, but none as peculiar and almost mystical as this. The chain of custody issue, prosecutor Dr. Almeida's vehement claim. All were valid, but Mendez's intuition, forged by decades of service and an incessant pursuit of fairness, told him there was something deeper at play. If that card contained what the defense claimed, it would be a monumental failure of the investigation and an injustice crying out for correction. The responsibility weighed on his shoulders, the pursuit of true justice, not just the cold application of the law. He wondered about the nature of truth, and how it sometimes revealed itself through the most circuitous and surprising paths, defying human logic. The technician, with steady and precise hands, connected the card to a specialized device. The monitor screen came to life, displaying folders and digital files. Mendez's heart beat faster, an accelerated rhythm of anticipation. He knew that small device could change the course of an entire trial, a young woman's life, and perhaps even public perception of the integrity of the justice system. The waiting room for Clara was a purgatory of uncertainties. Every minute that passed seemed to stretch into a painful eternity. She thought of her parents, who were in the courtroom gallery, their faces marked by the pain of seeing her suffer, but now illuminated by renewed hope. Overcoming was not just for her, but for her entire family, who had suffered in silence by her side, bearing the burden of an unjust accusation. She needed to prove her innocence, not only for herself, but to restore her name's honor and the peace of her loved ones, so they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the door to the adjoining room opened with a soft creak. It was a bailiff, with a grave expression, but with a glimmer of something new in his eyes. "Dr. Lucia, Ms. Clara, Judge Mendez requests everyone's presence back in the courtroom. The memory card analysis has been completed." The announcement made the air vibrate, a sound that seemed to carry destiny. Clara felt a chill run through her body, an intense mix of fear and anticipation, of dread and courage. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no turning back. She stood up, her legs slightly trembling, but with renewed determination in her eyes, a flame that refused to be extinguished. Lucia squeezed her hand, offering an encouraging smile, a gesture of solidarity. "Let's go, Clara. It's now." As they walked back, Clara looked at the window, expecting to see Shadow. He wasn't there, but she felt his presence, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone and that the truth, finally, was about to be revealed. The court waited, and with it, Clara's fate and the promise of justice that, for an instant, had seemed unattainable, but now proved possible. The air in the courtroom was charged with an almost palpable tension as Clara and Dr. Lucia returned. Each of Clara's steps echoed not only on the floorboards, but in her heart, gazes fixed on her, a mixture of curiosity and a new hope. The murmur that had previously filled the room was now a respectful silence. That environment, which for weeks had been the stage of her condemnation, seemed to await a new verdict, a turning point that no one, except her and her ally, could have foreseen. Dr. Ricardo Mendes, in his imposing robe and serious demeanor, resumed his seat. Beside him, the forensic technician, with a folder in hand, looked solemn. The judge struck his gavel once. "The court is once again in session," he declared, his voice grave and calm. "The presented memory card has been analyzed. The content is indeed relevant to this case and will be displayed. I ask that the screen be prepared." A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the room plunged into semi-darkness. The video began to play, captured by the hidden camera in Clara's office. The images were clear, revealing Clara's partner, Mr. Eduardo, in a heated discussion with another man, Mr. Gustavo, a rival architect. The scene showed Gustavo, with a cruel smile, manipulating objects on the partner's desk and attacking Eduardo. It wasn't Clara. It was Gustavo. Gustavo's voice, clear and cold, could be heard, confessing to the crime and then arranging the evidence to incriminate Clara, planting objects and altering documents. He spoke of how talented Clara was and how he felt he deserved the projects, the motivation, envy, and unbridled ambition. A muffled cry escaped from the gallery. Dr. Almeida, pale, staggered backward, his eyes fixed on the screen with disbelief and horror. His team was in shock. Dr. Lucia, beside Clara, squeezed her client's hand, tears of relief streaming down her face. Clara, previously tense, felt a monumental weight lifted from her shoulders. Tears came, not of sadness, but of overwhelming liberation. It was the truth, raw and undeniable. Her innocence was now visible, palpable. The jurors, previously severe-faced, now exchanged glances, their faces marked by shame and shock. Justice, by a thread, had been rescued. Judge Mendes, with an expression of deep seriousness, struck his gavel forcefully, ending the video. "In light of the irrefutable evidence," he declared, his voice resonating with authority, "the court has no option but to declare Ms. Clara innocent of all charges. Mr. Gustavo will be immediately detained and prosecuted for the murder of Mr. Eduardo and for attempting to incriminate her." A commotion erupted. Applause and shouts of relief mingled with murmurs of indignation. Bailiffs acted quickly, apprehending a stunned Gustavo who was attempting to flee. Clara's family, in the front rows, stood up, their faces bathed in tears of joy. Clara's mother, Ms. Sophia, extended her arms to her daughter, a gesture of love that could finally manifest. Clara ran into her mother's arms, feeling the warmth of the family embrace. It was the end of a nightmare, the rebirth of her life. Raising her eyes to the window, she saw Shadow the raven perched there, observing the scene. Its black eyes gleamed as if it understood the magnitude of what it had done. That small act of altruism, of feeding a solitary bird, had woven an invisible bond that saved her. The human and animal connection proved more powerful than any malice. Overcoming was real, and justice, though late and through unexpected paths, had prevailed. The world, once grey, now filled with colours and the promise of a future where truth would always find its voice. Clara felt her mother, Ms. Sophia's, embrace like a balm for her wounded soul. Sophia's warm tears wet her hair, and her mother's familiar scent enveloped her, bringing back the security she had so desperately missed. Her father, Mr. Roberto, a man of few words but immense love, approached, enveloping both in a tight, protective embrace. His shoulders trembled, and Clara knew he too had cried in silence for her. That moment, in the middle of the courtroom that had once been her Calvary, was the materialization of all the pain, and now all the relief. The family, her safe harbor, finally reunited, free from the burden of the unjust accusation. Dr. Lucia, with tear-filled eyes, watched the scene with a smile of pure satisfaction. She had fought with all her might, and seeing Clara in her parents' arms was the greatest reward. Dr. Almeida, the prosecutor, pale and dejected, approached. Miss Clara, he said, his voice choked, I am truly sorry. We acted based on the evidence we had. Clara looked at him, without anger, only with deep weariness. I just wish you had listened to me sooner, she replied, her voice weak but firm. Judge Mendez from his bench observed the interaction, his brow furrowed in thought. News of the turnaround spread like wildfire. Journalists, previously eager for a conviction, now clamored for interviews, seeking to understand the story of the Raven and the memory card. Public opinion, previously unforgiving, turned in her favor, offering apologies and solidarity. Clara, however, needed peace. She only wanted the quiet of her home, the company of her parents, and perhaps a visit to her office to thank Shadow. In the days that followed, Clara's home filled with a long-forgotten warmth. True friends came to embrace her. Neighbors, previously curious and distant, now greeted her with smiles and support. Each morning, she felt the lightness of a burden that was gone. Overcoming was a lived reality. She spent hours with her mother, reliving anxieties and hopes. Sophia, with the wisdom of age and maternal love, helped her heal the invisible wounds of injustice. Clara knew that professional reconstruction would be a challenge, but she wasn't alone. Dr. Lucia was already working to restore her reputation, and the architecture firm, previously tarnished, would begin to be rebuilt. Shadow, the Raven's altruism, had taught her a valuable lesson: kindness, even the simplest, yields great rewards. She decided that from then on, she would dedicate time to causes that defended justice for the wronged, so that others would not go through what she had. One afternoon, Clara returned to her office. The office, previously dusty, felt lighter, purified. She opened the window and, as if in a sacred ritual, placed a piece of bread on the windowsill. Shadow didn't take long to appear, landing softly, black eyes fixed on her. Clara extended her hand, and the Raven, with surprising confidence, pecked at the bread. The connection and gratitude sealed a new beginning. Truth had found its voice, justice had prevailed, and life offered her a future of renewed hope and purpose. She smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't felt in a long time, ready to embrace tomorrow. That genuine smile, which had not graced Clara's face for so long, was like a ray of sunshine after a long storm. She embraced tomorrow with the lightness of one freed from a heavy burden, but also with the wisdom of one who had faced darkness. The days that followed her acquittal were filled with a blessed quietude. The house, once a stage for silent anxieties, now resonated with laughter and gentle conversations. Miss Sophia, her mother, her eyes still moist with relief, prepared her favorite dishes, and Mr. Roberto, her father, spent hours in the garden, pruning the rose bushes, a sign that life was returning to its natural rhythm. Clara, little by little, began to revisit her office, not to work on urgent projects, but to reorganize her ideas and the space itself. Every object, every drawing seemed to carry memories, some painful, others now imbued with new meaning. She felt immense gratitude for Dr. Lucia, who tirelessly worked to restore her professional reputation, and for Shadow, the Raven, who continued his morning visits to the window, accepting breadcrumbs like an old friend. The bird's silent presence was a constant reminder that kindness, however small, could weave the strongest threads of hope. Her promise to dedicate time to those who suffered injustices was not just a fleeting idea. She felt a deep calling, a resonance with others' pain that only someone who had lived the same experience could understand. She imagined how she could use her voice, her story, to illuminate dark paths for others. She thought of creating a foundation, or perhaps volunteering for an organization. Overcoming, for her, was not just about getting back on her feet, but about reaching out so that others could do the same. One afternoon, while reviewing some old sketches, the doorbell rang. It was an elderly woman, with meticulously arranged white hair and a tired but dignified gaze. She held a crocheted bag and a crumpled envelope. "Miss Clara," "Forgive the intrusion," the woman said, her voice soft but firm. "My name is Helena. I saw your story on television. I was very touched, and somehow I felt I needed to come." Clara, surprised, invited her in, offering a cup of tea. Helena sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she held the cup. "Some years ago," Helena began, her eyes fixed on a distant point, "I was accused of embezzling funds from the company where I worked for 30 years. I lost everything, my reputation, my savings, the trust of my friends. My case was dismissed due to lack of evidence, but the shadow of the accusation never left me." A solitary tear rolled down her wrinkled face. "When I saw what happened to you with the raven and the memory card, something told me it wasn't a coincidence. I remembered a strange detail, a bird that always appeared at my boss's window at the time, a raven just like yours. And once, I saw him with Mr. Gustavo, your rival. He was a consultant for the company at the time." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. Gustavo's name, the man who had framed her, brought with it a wave of painful memories. The idea that he could have done something similar to someone else using such cunning methods was disturbing. Helena continued, her voice choked. "I know it sounds crazy, but I feel there's a connection. I just wanted someone to listen to me, just as the judge listened to you." She held out the crumpled envelope. Inside, there was an old photograph and a small bird brooch. The turning point had arrived, not as a new direct danger for Clara, but as an undeniable call to her newfound mission of justice. Clara looked at Helena, feeling the weight of that story and the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. Her heart, which yearned for peace, now faced a new dilemma, but also a new opportunity to make a difference. Clara took the crumpled envelope from Helena's trembling hands. Carefully, she removed the old photograph and the small bird brooch. The yellowed photo showed a group of employees, among them a young Gustavo with his cunning smile, and a younger Helena. The delicate brooch depicted a raven in full flight. A shiver ran down Clara's spine. The coincidence of the raven, Gustavo's involvement. It was too much to ignore. The peace she so longed for seemed a distant luxury, replaced by a sense of urgency and deep compassion for Helena. The elderly woman, her eyes fixed on Clara, placed all her hopes in her, a silent and moving faith. "Helena," Clara began, her voice soft but firm, "I perfectly understand your pain. The feeling of having one's honor stained, of being unjustly accused. It's a deep wound." She held Helena's wrinkled hand, conveying warmth. "I cannot promise the outcome, but I promise I will look into your case with full attention and dedication." Helena's eyes filled with tears, and a faint but genuine smile appeared on her lips. "Thank you, my dear. I knew coming here wouldn't be in vain. I felt a connection, a strength in your story that gave me courage." Clara spent the next hours listening to Helena in detail, noting names, dates, and events. Helena's story was a disturbing echo of her own: accusation of embezzlement, loss of reputation due to lack of evidence, and the subtle presence of a raven near the boss's office. Gustavo, at the time, was a financial consultant with unrestricted access to the company's accounts. The pattern was undeniable. After Helena left, Clara picked up the phone and dialed Dr. Lucia's number. "Lucia, I need your help again," she said, her voice serious. She recounted Helena's story, the unexpected visit, the similarities to her own case, and the connection to Gustavo. Dr. Lucia listened attentively. "Clara, this is extraordinary and concerning. Reopening a closed case is an immense challenge without new evidence. But the mention of Gustavo and the coincidence of the raven, we cannot dismiss it. Bring me everything Helena gave you. We will analyze every detail. If Gustavo did this to other people, we need to expose the truth." The conversation with Lucia brought a mix of relief and responsibility. Clara knew she was embarking on a complex journey, requiring time and energy. But Helena's gaze, the fragility of her hope, was a powerful engine. She couldn't ignore it. That raven brooch in her hand seemed to pulse with the promise of justice. It was a reminder that truth needed to be unearthed with courage, and that her suffering had prepared her to be the voice of the silenced. Clara felt renewed strength, a clarity of purpose that surpassed her desire for peace. She stood up, ready for the fight. Clara stood up, the determination in her eyes overcoming any lingering fatigue. The promise to Helena was not a burden, but a renewed purpose, a flame ignited in her chest that refused to be extinguished. The next morning, she met Dr. Lucia at the lawyer's office, bringing with her the crumpled envelope and the raven brooch. The environment, once the stage for her own battle, now seemed a headquarters for a new mission. Lucia, with her usual efficiency, had already conducted some preliminary research on Helena's case, documents spread across the mahogany desk. "It's as I expected, Clara," Lucia said, adjusting her glasses on the bridge of her nose and sighing lightly. "The case was closed almost 10 years ago. Reopening it will be an arduous battle, a true challenge. The prosecution doesn't like to revisit its own failures, and time, unfortunately, erases many clues and weakens witnesses' memories." Clara nodded, her heart heavy with the impending difficulty, but undeterred. Her fingers caressed the raven brooch, feeling the cold texture of the metal. "I know, Lucia, but Helena's story is so similar to mine. The injustice is the same. The pain of the unfounded accusation is identical. I cannot turn my back on her, not after everything I've been through." Lucia observed the young architect, noting the unwavering flame in her eyes, the strength that adversity itself had forged. "And we won't. But we need more than similarities and intuitions, however strong they may be. We need concrete evidence that links Gustavo to this embezzlement and that proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Helena is innocent." In the days that followed, Clara immersed herself body and soul in Helena's story. She visited the elderly woman again in her modest home, spending hours on end, asking for more details, old documents, anything that could serve as a thread to unravel the web of deceit. Helena, with immense gratitude that manifested in every look and gesture, rummaged through dusty boxes and yellowed photo albums, each item a painful memory of her life undone by the accusation. Meanwhile, Lucia used her contacts in the legal sphere, trying to gain access to the archived case files, facing bureaucracy and the natural resistance of a system that preferred to maintain the status quo. Clara's family, though concerned about the new challenge she embraced with such passion, offered their unconditional support. Ms. Sophia, her voice choked with maternal concern, said, "My daughter, you've just emerged from a nightmare that almost destroyed you. Are you sure you want to enter another so complex and draining?" Clara held her mother's hand, conveying reassurance. "Mother, I'm not entering a nightmare. I'm fighting so that someone else doesn't live what I lived. It's different, it's a purpose, a way to transform pain into something good." Mr. Roberto, watching from afar, merely nodded, a glimmer of pride and understanding in his tired eyes. Each morning, Clara continued to feed shadow at her office window. The raven, with its silent and observant presence, seemed a mute confidant, a constant reminder that truth at times hides in the most improbable places and reveals itself through the most unexpected messengers. The connection with the bird now was more than a comfort. It was a symbol of her new journey, a link to the justice she tirelessly sought for Helena. She knew the battle would be long and exhaustive, demanding every drop of her energy, but she felt an inner strength she never imagined possessing. Overcoming her own ordeal had transformed her, forging in her an unwavering resilience and a sense of purpose that transcended her own pain. She was no longer just the talented architect. She was a defender of truth, a voice for those who had been silenced and forgotten. Helena's image, with her tired eyes and renewed hope, was the fuel that propelled her forward. She felt that every step she took towards justice for Helena was also a step in her own healing, a closure for the deep wounds that injustice had left in her soul. The path would be arduous, but Clara was ready for the fight, her heart full of hope and an unwavering desire to make a difference. Clara plunged into the task with energy. Days turned into a marathon of meetings, research, and conversations. She and Dr. Lucia established a routine: meetings for planning, afternoons for documents, and Helena. The elderly woman, with a failing memory but intact emotion, tried to recall every detail of the past, every nuance of the accusation that had undone her. The first barrier was bureaucracy. The judicial system, as Lucia had warned, was not quick to admit errors or reopen closed cases. Requests for documents were denied or dragged out, phone calls and emails ignored. With each closed door, frustration escaped Lucia, but Clara, remembering her own battle, insisted, "We cannot give up, they cannot defeat us. Truth has the right to be heard." Helena, in turn, lived an emotional roller coaster. The hope rekindled by Clara was a balm, but with each refusal, despair threatened. One afternoon, Clara found her sitting by the window, her gaze lost, shoulders slumped under the weight of injustice. "Sometimes I think it's useless," Helena confessed, her voice almost a whisper. "It's been so long. Who will believe an old woman like me without proof?" Clara sat beside her, holding her wrinkled hand with tenderness, conveying strength. "I believe in you, Helena, and Lucia does too. Truth manifests itself, even after years. Your dignity deserves to be restored. It's not about believing an old woman, it's about believing in justice." Helena's eyes, previously dull, shone with new determination. The connection between the two deepened. United by the scar of injustice and the search for reparation, Lucia used her vast experience and contacts to find loopholes in the system. She knew they needed more than similarity. They needed a concrete link, irrefutable proof that connected Gustavo not only to Clara's case, but undeniably to Helena's. The lawyer investigated other embezzlement cases filed around the same time, in companies where Gustavo had worked. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, a difficult task, but persistence was the only tool to unravel the web of lies. Clara, in her moments of solitude in the office, saw shadow land on her window. The raven, with peculiar intelligence and a penetrating gaze, seemed to observe her with silent understanding, a mute guardian of her new mission. She offered him breadcrumbs, and the bird accepted them with reverence. Shadow's presence was a constant reminder that justice at times chooses mysterious paths and unlikely messengers to reveal itself, as it had done for her. The search for evidence was exhaustive. Clara felt that every breakthrough, every recovered document, every crucial memory from Helena was a significant step towards the light. The pain of her own ordeal transformed into a shield, an armor of compassion and resilience. She fought not just for Helena, she fought for silenced voices, for forgotten truths. Her heart, once wounded, now pulsed with a greater purpose, an unwavering desire to make a difference. The journey was long, but Clara was ready. With hope as her guide and justice as her final destination. The journey, indeed, was long, and the days stretched into weeks of arduous work and frustrations. Clara and Dr. Lucia delved into the dusty archives of Helena's case, each page a challenge, each bureaucratic refusal a blow to their spirits. The lawyer, her patience tested, faced unanswered phone calls and ignored emails, feeling the weight of the system's inertia. "It's like fighting a concrete wall, Clara," Lucia sighed, her shoulders tense as she pushed her glasses onto her forehead. "They simply don't want to reopen what they consider resolved." Clara, however, refused to yield. Helena's image, with her eyes full of fragile hope, was a shield against discouragement. She spent hours with the elderly woman, rummaging through old boxes, examining receipts and letters, trying to stitch Helena's fragmented memories into a coherent whole. The elderly woman, in turn, lived between peaks of optimism and valleys of despair. One afternoon, Clara found her crying softly, the raven brooch in her wrinkled hands. "I don't know if I can take it any more, my dear," Helena sobbed, her voice choked. "It seems the truth will never come out. I'm so tired." Clara knelt beside her, embracing her with tenderness. "Don't say that, Helena. Truth has its time, but it always finds a way. We won't give up. Your story is important, and your dignity will be restored." As Clara comforted her, her eyes fell on the raven brooch Helena held. That small object, so similar to shadow, seemed to vibrate with a silent energy. That same week, Lucia made an intriguing discovery. Amidst hundreds of financial reports from Gustavo's past consultancies, she noticed a peculiar pattern. In 3 different companies where he had acted as a consultant, there was the creation of a strategic reserve fund with atypical financial movements, always in amounts that, when summed, were significant. It was a subtle maneuver, almost undetectable, but the repetition caught her attention. "Clara, look at this," Lucia said, pointing to the documents on her screen. Gustavo used a very specific method to embezzle money, a reserve fund that was in fact a ghost account. It's a recurring pattern. Clara examined the data, feeling a chill. It was the link they sought. She thought of Helena's story, of the embezzlement accusation. Suddenly, the image of the raven brooch, the conversation with Helena about her boss and Gustavo, everything clicked. Helena mentioned something about a special fund that Gustavo always discussed with her boss, with a strange smile, Clara said, her voice full of urgency. And she said he always left a document on the boss's desk with that name, a document she found strange. Lucia's eyes widened. A document! This could be the key. If Helena can remember more details about that document or the exact name of the fund in her company, we might have the irrefutable proof we need to reopen the case. Hope, which had seemed almost extinguished, rekindled with overwhelming force. The raven brooch, which Helena held, now seemed not just a symbol, but a silent messenger, connecting the loose ends of a web of deceit. Truth was lurking, and the climax of that long battle was about to unfold. Clara and Lucia felt a shiver of urgency in that moment. Helena's mention of the special fund and the document Gustavo left on the boss's desk was the missing piece, the flame that rekindled hope. "I need to go see her now, Lucia," Clara said, standing up with a renewed energy that seemed to spring from her soul. Lucia nodded, her experienced eyes shining with cautious but palpable hope. "Go. Try to make her remember every detail. The exact name of the fund, the color of the paper, anything that can guide us. Every fragment is precious." Clara drove to Helena's house, her heart beating faster, a silent prayer on her lips. She found the elderly woman in the living room, looking at the raven brooch in her wrinkled hands, her gaze distant. "Helena, we need to talk again about that document Gustavo used to leave on your boss's desk," Clara began, sitting close to her and holding her hand with tenderness. "Do you remember anything else? What was written on it? Where did he keep it?" Helena closed her wrinkled eyes, trying to pull memories from a decade ago, like someone searching for a lost thread in a tangled skein. A deep sigh escaped her lips. "It was an important paper, I know. He always left it on top of others. It had the name Strategic Contingency Fund. Yes, that was it. And it had a stamp, a red stamp, that I had never seen before on the company's documents." She opened her eyes, a flash of clarity in them, and her voice gained strength. "And he kept it in a brown folder, in the bottom drawer of the boss's desk, which was always locked, but he had a copy. I saw him handling it once, before locking the drawer. Clara felt a chill of recognition. The brown folder, the red stamp, the exact name of the fund, everything matched the pattern Lucia had discovered in other cases. Helena, this is crucial. If we can find that copy or the original document, we will have the proof we need to clear your name. The lawyer Lucia, with the new and vital information, acted quickly. With the exact name of the fund and the precise description of the document, she obtained a court order to access the old archives of the company where Helena worked. Bureaucracy, as always, tried to erect its barriers, but the specificity of the information Helena finally managed to recall opened doors that had previously seemed insurmountable. While Lucia dealt with the legal procedures, Clara returned to her office, her mind buzzing. Shadow, the raven, landed silently on her window, like a winged guardian, observing her with its intelligent eyes. Clara felt a deep connection with the bird, as if it were a silent link to the truth she so desperately sought. She offered him a piece of bread, and Shadow took it delicately, a gesture of mutual trust. Days later, the news they had so eagerly awaited arrived. Lucia called Clara, her voice choked with emotion and triumph. "Clara, we did it. We found the documents in that bottom drawer in the brown folder with the red stamp. And the fund's name is exactly Strategic Contingency Fund. There are records of transfers to external accounts that did not belong to the company, all signed by Gustavo, with the forged authorization of Helena's boss. Gustavo's signature is unmistakable. It's the irrefutable proof we needed to reopen the case and prove Helena's innocence." Clara felt a lump in her throat, her eyes moist with tears of relief and gratitude. Justice, which had seemed so distant, was finally manifesting, weaving its way through the shadows. She called Helena, who answered with a voice trembling with apprehension. "Helena, we did it! You will be exonerated. Your dignity will be restored." The elderly woman burst into deep sobs of relief, a sound Clara would never forget, a mixture of released pain and immense gratitude. "Thank you, my dear. Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me my life back." The reopening process was swift, given the clarity and strength of the new evidence. Gustavo was confronted with the irrefutable evidence Lucia had meticulously gathered. With no escape and the truth exposed, he confessed to the sordid scheme he had devised to embezzle funds and incriminate Helena, revealing the extent of his cruelty and envy. Helena's reputation was completely restored, and she received fair compensation for the years of suffering and humiliation she had endured. In court, when the final decision was read, Helena, with her head held high and a radiant smile that lit up the entire room, looked at Clara. Her eyes conveyed infinite gratitude, a silent love. Clara felt a deep peace and a sense of purpose fulfilled. That moment was the closing of a cycle, not just for Helena, but for her too. Shadow, the raven, was not physically present in the courtroom that day, but its silent and inspiring presence in Clara's journey was a constant reminder that truth, at times, chooses the most unexpected paths and the most improbable messengers to manifest, restoring justice where it seemed lost. Clara embraced Helena with an affection that transcended words, feeling the warmth of human connection and the pure joy of justice finally served. Overcoming her own pain had transformed her deeply, and now she was the voice of hope for those who, like Helena, had been silenced by injustice. Clara and Helena left the courtroom hand in hand, the afternoon sunlight bathing their faces. The air felt lighter, the sky bluer, celebrating the victory of truth. Helena, previously bowed by the weight of injustice, now walked with renewed dignity, a sincere smile on her lips that radiated deep peace. Her eyes, once full of sadness, shone with relief. "I never thought I'd live to see this day, Clara," she said. her voice choked with emotion, squeezing the young architect's hand. "You gave me my life back." Clara felt the warmth of Helena's wrinkled hand, and a lump of emotion tightened her throat. The elderly woman's transformation filled her with indescribable joy, a balm for her wounds. Lucia, with a tired but victorious smile, joined them. "It's a victory for all of us, Helena, and above all, for justice." News of Helena's innocence spread quickly. The community, which had previously looked at her with suspicion, now welcomed her with warmth and apologies. Ms. Sophia and Mr. Roberto waited for Clara at the courthouse exit, their eyes moist with pride and relief. "My daughter, you are an inspiration," Miss Sophia whispered, hugging Clara tightly. Mr. Roberto merely squeezed his daughter's shoulder, a silent gesture worth more than 1,000 words, expressing admiration. Helena's family, who had distanced themselves, began to reconnect. Seeking forgiveness and rebuilding bonds, the compensation allowed her to renovate her house and fulfill her dream of traveling, living her days with comfort, dignity, and well-deserved tranquility. In the months that followed, Clara's life took a new turn. She continued with her work as an architect, but now each project was imbued with a greater purpose. She volunteered to help underprivileged people rebuild their homes and community centers, using her talent to create spaces that inspired hope and dignity. Her experience had taught her that architecture was not just about buildings, but about building lives. The pain of her ordeal and the fight for Helena transformed her, forging in her unwavering resilience and a sense of altruism that guided her. She was no longer just the talented architect. She was a defender of truth, a powerful voice for the silenced. Every morning, shadow continued to land on her office window. The raven, with its silent and observant presence, was a constant reminder that justice, at times, chooses the most mysterious paths and the most improbable messengers to manifest. The connection with the bird now was more than a comfort. It was a living symbol of her journey, an unbreakable link to the truth. Inspired by her story and Helena's, Clara founded a small non-profit organization dedicated to offering legal and emotional support to unjustly accused people, naming it Wings of Truth. Lucia became a vital partner in this new endeavor, lending her expertise and passion for justice, forming a formidable duo. The story of Clara and Helena, the young architect and the wronged elderly woman, became a beacon of hope and a testament to perseverance. They proved that even in the darkest moments, faith in truth and the courage to fight for it can move mountains. Clara's life, once marked by the shadow of accusation, blossomed into a garden of purpose, compassion, and achievements. She looked to the future with the certainty that every step she took, every hand she extended, was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unwavering belief that justice, in the end, always finds its way, often through the most unlikely witnesses. Months turned into a year, and the Wings of Truth organization flourished under Clara's dedicated leadership and Dr. Lucia's invaluable expertise. The small office, which began with just the two of them, now boasted a team of passionate volunteers, including young lawyers and social workers, all inspired by the story of overcoming and justice. They had helped dozens of people navigate the bureaucratic and emotional labyrinth of the judicial system, offering not only legal support, but also a friendly shoulder and the hope that truth, however hidden, would always find a way. Every victory, however small, was celebrated with a mix of joy and gratitude, reinforcing the belief that the work they did was essential. Helena, in turn, was experiencing a new spring in her life. The fair compensation she received allowed her to completely renovate her house, transforming it into a welcoming home full of light, a reflection of her restored soul. She fulfilled her dream of visiting Italy, sending Clara vibrant postcards from Rome and Florence. with emotional messages about the beauty of the world and the joy of being able to live it fully. Her eyes, once laden with pain and distrust, now shone with the serenity of one who had found peace. She reconnected with her family, who welcomed her back with love and regret, and began to dedicate part of her time to telling her story at community gatherings, inspiring others not to lose faith in justice and human kindness. She became a kind of ambassador of hope, a living testament to the power of resilience. Clara observed all this with a light and grateful heart. Her work as an architect continued, but now with a new meaning. She designed spaces that were more than structures. They were refuges, community centers, and homes for those who needed a new beginning. In one of her most recent projects, a community center for vulnerable families, she designed a mural at the main entrance, a stylized raven with open wings carrying a small point of light in its beak. It was a silent tribute to Shadow, her unexpected messenger, and a constant reminder that truth, at times, chooses the most mysterious paths to manifest. Shadow, the raven, continued his routine of morning visits to Clara's office window. He perched there, observing her with his intelligent and curious eyes, like a silent guardian. Clara always offered him a piece of bread, and the bird accepted it with the same reverence as always, an unbreakable bond between them. Shadow's presence was a balm for Clara's soul, a reminder that life, even after the most violent storms, always finds a way to flourish, and that hope is the most powerful of forces. The story of Clara and Helena, told and retold, inspired many. People of all ages sought out Wings of Truth, not only for help, but also to offer their time and talent. The organization became a symbol that compassion and perseverance can, indeed, move mountains, and that human connection is the foundation of all true justice. Clara, the young architect who was almost destroyed by injustice, had transformed into a beacon of hope, a voice for the silenced, and living proof that truth, in the end, always finds its way to the light, often through the most unlikely witnesses. Her journey was an eternal testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unwavering belief that each of us has the power to make a difference.